Today on With the First Pick, we're talking the best games, standout performances, and biggest storylines from Week 5 of the NFL season. JJ, are you there? Can you tell them what time it is?
It is time for Ran It Back Monday.
That's the aura and the vibes I'm looking for. I'm Ryan Wilson, that's former Titans GM Rand Carthon, and that's CBS Sports NFL Insider Jonathan Jones. And welcome to With the First Pick, where we've been keeping it a buck since last week, y'all. All right. We usually talk NFL only on Monday's show and save Wednesday's podcast for college prospects. But we got some extenuating circumstances this week, folks. First, Mr. Carthon, we got to show you some love to you and your Florida Gators for their big win over the University of Texas.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if producer Sharon has a photo for us, but I want you to talk about, were you at the Swamp?
Yeah, I was there.
Tell us about it.
It was the Swamp, and it was a great environment, really good game. Felt like we tried to give it away to them at the end with the clock management. I won't even get into. Oh wow!
Hey!
Wow! So
2002 from the Knox who's that from? Producer Sharon. It's from the Tallahassee Times, I believe, and that's the preseason picture. If you're listening, Rand, explain to us what's going on with you and your teammate Ernest Graham.
So it's funny that you have this picture with Sharon. You got to send me this picture because after the game, I got my sons with Ernest's son, who is Miles Graham, who I know we're going to be talking about here on the show in the coming years. And we took a picture of former Gator players and current Gators with our kids. And so it was a cool little moment to have. But that's funny. I don't know that I've ever seen that picture, to be honest with you. Cause
I didn't think you had hair until I saw that photograph, so I'm glad we have confirmation of that.
Dang. Pot meet kettle meet pot.
Hey, let me ask you, though, before I get to some less exciting news. How was the experience being back in the Swamp? And I know we can't talk about Archquavius Manning, but the defense got after it. They sent him and the rest of that Texas offense a message.
Yeah, JJ, we'll educate you on
I think I understand.
The quarterback formerly known. No, the defensive front got after it. They played in both sides of the ball played in a way that I hadn't seen them play all year, which makes you question even more, like, where the hell has this been? But they stepped up to the challenge, beat a top 10 team at home when you really, really needed it. But again, it was a good environment. I was there with my family. It was family weekend, so got a chance to just be back on campus with my family, my daughter, and just create some memories. So it was pretty dope.
It was a lot of fun to watch. I did not want to text you until the game was over so as not to curse it, because there were some flubs down the stretch we can talk about on Thursday's show. But, hey, a win's a win. And, JJ, at the exact opposite end of the spectrum, the football gods remain very angry at Bill Belichick and the UNC football program. They got absolutely obliterated at home on Saturday by a previously punchless Clemson team. And we can roll this into a bigger conversation about Drake May's big win Sunday night versus the Bills and what UNC's program did or didn't want to tweet about it. But as an alum of North Carolina, has there been a lower moment in UNC athletics than where the Tar Heels currently find themselves?
That 8-20, what was it, 2002 season for basketball
Matt
was
Doherty
really low, right? That Matt Doherty year was really low, considering what basketball meant and means to UNC. Considering it was right after the Dean Smith years and Guttridge, who had gotten Carolina to a couple of Final Fours. So I always hesitate to talk about rock bottom, but this is bad.
It's close.
Okay, this is bad. I'm actually surprised that they were able to beat both Richmond and Charlotte. I know we have the power conference teams up there. I thought that they were going to split those games because of the dearth of talent at Carolina, and I know that Bill Belichick has talked about how they're flipping the roster. And I was just texting with an alum from Carolina just a little bit ago who said, yeah, they flipped the roster. The roster's worse than it was last year. It's hard to argue that. And, I know that there is the report that Bill Belichick instructed the program to not tweet about the Patriots. I know for a fact, and Belichick has said so, he didn't want Patriot scouts in the building, right? He's not welcome in New England, so they're not welcome in my building, is what he has said. Carolina is probably going to deny it, And they have since posted, as soon as that report comes out, right, it's convenient that they then post about Drake May and others. What I would say is it is completely antithetical to what Bill Belichick should be creating at Carolina to not post about Drake May. You're talking about a homegrown talent, right? You're talking about a Tar Heel born and bred. Dad used to be a quarterback there. Brother hitting the shot against Kentucky, right? And he got flipped from Alabama. Nick Saban was literally at this dude's high school basketball games trying to get this guy to go to Alabama and be a quarterback. And he goes to Carolina to be a quarterback. He's drafted in the top 3. He is playing his best ball, and trajectory is pointed up. You don't want to tweet about him? You don't want to post about him? This is the model for your program, Drake May. And that is why Carolina football under Bill Belichick will not be successful, at least this year. Hopefully things get turned around as an alum, but right now things look very, very poor. If that is not the guy that you want to promote, then you have massive issues, because he is the model. He is the guy that every college football program is dying to have, that they can promote and get recruiting talent. And if you're not out there posting about him 7 times a day like he's an ex that you're trying to win back, you've got issues.
Wait a minute, didn't Belichick draft Drake May?
No, that was because Gerard Mayo drafted him. Remember, Belichick didn't like his footwork. Belichick wasn't that big of a fan of his in the pre-draft process.
But see, here's my thing, and I've gone through this from a college perspective, in terms of being a Florida Gator, playing for Steve Spurrier, and then there were a bunch of coaches that came after Steve Spurrier. And we've had coaches come through Florida that didn't make former players feel welcome, right? And where I always took issue is, no matter what, I'm a Gator, and I will always be a Gator. You are currently a placeholder, right? And you're going to go on to the next thing, the next job, and you're no longer going to be a Gator because you didn't graduate from there or what have you. And so that's what I always take issue with when people come into programs and make these type of statements and do these type of things as if they are the one that holds the key to what it is to be a Gator or a Tar Heel, or whatever. So that's the part, man, where you're doing too much. You should be focused on winning football games at this point and trying to add to your already great legacy. But you're getting into this little cat fight with an organization who is actually doing pretty well right now, and they're not thinking about you. You know what I mean?
No, that's right. Nor should they be. We got just a couple minutes here, JJ, but following what Rand said, you can't see it. There's a picture right there of the 82 National Championship team signed by Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, and James Worthy, who you might know quite well. But my point is that Matt Doherty is also on that poster. When he came in, he cleaned house, including the secretaries when he took over that job. So he did everything the exact wrong way, which is what you're talking about, Rand. And you know what? Maybe we talk about this on the other side, because I do want to continue this conversation for a little bit, because I think it's sort of important. And I don't want to oversell it. But, Sharon, let's go to a break, and I'll put this question out into the ether, and you guys can think about it for 3 minutes. Has Bill Belichick tarnished his legacy to such a point over the last 18 or so months that we're going to have serious questions when we look back on the totality of his career? He's a Hall of Famer, greatest coach ever, all that. But he's done some odd things over the last year and a half that gives you pause. And we talk a lot about being petty and joking about it on this podcast. It feels like he's taken it to a whole nother level. And if you told me he had a side hustle with a petty podcast, I would 100% believe it, because that seems to be the currency he traffics in. But just think about that. Let's take a quick break, and we'll talk about that when we come back. All right, we're back. Rand got producer Sharon giggling in our ear as we're trying to do a very serious show. All right, ask a probing capital J journalism question going into the break, JJ. As our capital J journalist, I'll ask you. Feels like the old legacy's been tarnished a little bit here for Bill Belichick with the way he's comported himself. Is that overblown 2025 media hype, or is there some truth to that?
I mean, there was a world 10 months ago where Bill Belichick could have again been an NFL head coach, right? You go back 2 years ago, and he's in the running for the Atlanta Falcons job that goes to Raheem Morris. And then he takes that sort of gap year, right? And everyone is wondering, could he go back to the NFL? And the Cowboys open and some other teams, right? And he obviously chooses North Carolina. I don't see any way right now that an NFL team owner ultimately brings in Bill Belichick for an interview. Right. And obviously he and everyone involved with North Carolina would say he's happy at North Carolina. He's going to change the program. He's going to turn it around. He's not interested in the NFL anymore. All those things. Right. But if there were interest involved, I don't see there being a reciprocal interest. And yes, I am an alum. Right here is a blue cup from He's Not Here. Okay. And so while I do have my own bias and my own thoughts, because I am a capital J journalist and because I'm probably going to have to continue reporting on this, I'll save some of my own thoughts. But what I will share is a very common theme that I have heard from a number of alums who have both played and otherwise, who are upset at not only, we talk about Bill Belichick tarnishing his image, this is still a prestigious university. This is a university that takes itself quite seriously, right? And while the football program is not one that competes for national championships, the embarrassment is transcending the football program. People are talking about the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in a way that they haven't spoken about it really since the whole NCAA scandal from 2010, 2011. And before that, really, you hadn't discussed it like that. So you get out of the fog of that NCAA scandal from a decade and a half ago, and you find yourself here where it's internet memes. And that is very embarrassing to a proud and prestigious university like UNC.
And for folks who aren't steeped in sort of Research Triangle Park history, NC State is usually the brunt of the jokes when you talk about the Dukes, the UNCs, the North Carolinas, even Wake Forest, if you want to include them, because those are academic schools and then the state agricultural school, and it just feel like things are changing. Rain, I'll ask you briefly for your thoughts on the legacy issue, and then let's turn to something much more positive. We'll talk about Cam Ward getting his first win on the road in Arizona, what it means for him, because he, again, balled out, and what it means for a Cardinals team that, again, feels like once week 4 or 5 rolls around, they just figure out how to play football. So you can start with Bill Belichick and finish up with something a little more upbeat.
All right, so I'm not going to touch the part of the University of North Carolina. I am not even qualified to speak on that and how that proud, prestigious university feels about Bill Belichick and everything going on. I'm going to more so look from just the football coach, the legacy piece. And when JJ started answering the question, you saw my head go down. I was looking up something on my phone because it was a memory that came to me, and I was going to flip it and ask the question, does anybody remember that Vince Lombardi coached the Washington Redskins after Green Bay? You don't remember that. No. Because he created such a legacy in Green Bay. And so that's where I feel, Bill Belichick is. He's one of the greatest coaches, in the history of our game, arguably the best. That'll always be debated. But this will be a small blip, on the radar for him that, when it's all said and done and he's officially retired, because he will go into the NFL Hall of Fame, we'll be talking primarily about the dynasty that he created with the New England Patriots. Transitioning and moving on, you mentioned it, and I've been calling it all day, saying Calvin and Patrice's baby boy, Cam, the quarterback formerly known as Cameron, got a big win, and it was a big win for the organization at a time when they needed. Came into this game 0-4. There's a lot of things being speculated, going around, and we talked about the comments that he made, at the press conference, last week. And it was one of those games where as you're sitting there and you're watching, and it just never felt like Arizona could put them away. Even though the Titans weren't doing anything particularly well on offense, just in terms of moving the football, the Cardinals just couldn't put them away. And then when Emari Demercado,
he didn't watch the show last week, by the way.
No, he didn't watch the show. He didn't watch our show. He didn't watch Friday tape, because Friday tape shows you the mistakes that have happened around the league, and where there's a portion of it called Around the League, where you see all all the bloops and blunders and good things and situational football that have happened around the league the week before, he wasn't paying attention. And I don't know if Jonathan Gannon allows phones in the meetings, but he was probably checking his mentions at that point. But that was the turning point. And I agree, because Jonathan Gannon has said it's never about one play, because there are other things that happen. The Kyler Murray, fumble and, those things.
JJ's face.
No. And I'm just saying it for context, like it's not just about one play. But if you could pick one play that turned the tide of the game, it was
you
that
have a nomination?
It was that one play. And that's where we've been, and we've talked about it so much on just all platforms about the ball being everything and how the number of fumbles is up. And I know this is included as a fumble. We need to find a category called a giveaway, because a fumble happens when you get hit, contact, all those things. But, A.D. Mitchell, you want to high step in with the ball, you gave it away. DeMarcado, you want to do the Deshaun Jackson flip behind you, you gave the ball away. And we say it we said it on this show, letters and logos. Once you get to the letters and logos with your feet, with the ball secure, do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. At that point, you earned the right because you got there. But, again, this Cam Ward made some big throws throughout this football game that got them back in it. And how about, I'm going to give a golf clap to my man C-Red, Calvin Ridley. Made some big
catch
catches
down the end there.
Down at the end, went over 100 yards on the day because he's been dealing with drops. But this was a big-time win because they play a Raiders team who is going to come into this game limping. And this is an opportunity not only for Cam Ward, but more importantly for Brian Callahan to be able to build some momentum to carry them throughout the rest of the season.
And Ryan, I don't think anybody can speak as well as Rand just did on that topic, so I'll leave what he said there. But something I have not been able to hit on yet about this play, this Mercado fumble, is that the best rule in football reared its head again. And that is when you fumble the football through the end zone, the other team gets possession at the 20-yard line because the ball's worth millions. And there is only one place in earth in this game that you can score 6 points, and it is about to be in that rectangle that he is nearing. And so when people say, oh, well, if you fumble off to the side, well, that's not possession to the other team. That's right. It's also not 6 points if you run out of bounds. It's 6 points when you go in that end zone. And so if you fumble in that end zone, the greatest reward possible, then you get the greatest punishment possible. That is the ball to the other team. I love how I was getting an argument with somebody yesterday about how they said, oh, well, it was his own stupidity and he deserves to lose possession because he let it go. What happens if L'Jarius Sneed punches that ball out? Do you want the Arizona Cardinals to get the ball at the 1 yard line because he made a play? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So whether you're reaching for the pylon and it slips out of your hands, whether the defensive player makes a play and punches it, or whether you give it up, you do not deserve the football because the football is worth millions. And in the place where you cannot fumble, when you do fumble, it should cost you more than anywhere else on planet Earth. I am so happy that in back-to-back weeks we have seen this play and no one is complaining about what they used to call the worst rule in football, but Ryan and Ram, it is indeed the best rule in football.
It's been so egregious that you can't even complain about it. And I appreciate JJ up in a soapbox there. I don't agree with JJ often. He hit a grand slam with his comments just there. The other thing is shout out to L'Jarius Sneed for running down the play and being this close to actually punching the ball out of the end zone. Rand, what do you think about this theory? I was thinking about this as JJ was talking and the punitive nature that some people used to think, but not so much anymore since it's hard to refute it. The other team gets the ball at their own 20. So let's say L'Jarius punches it out. And then the other team gets the ball at their own 20. The Titans have the ball at their own 20. Let's say you have an A.D. Mitchell situation or you have a DeMarcado situation. How about we put the ball at the other team's 20, like 80 yards away? Would that be a deterrent enough for someone to run all the way through the end zone? Because I think that would be the sort of punishment where you're like, you know what? The punishment may not fit the crime, but I get the message. Like, what do you have to do to convince these guys to quit doing this?
I mean, first and foremost, you gotta there has to be some type of repercussion from the standpoint of, hey, Imari, A.D. Mitchell, hey, you come sit next to me this week. You're going to be inactive, and that's the only way these kids are going to learn. You take away the one thing that they care about the most, right? And that's their ability to get on the football field, because clearly you can't be trusted in those type moments. And I don't want to dogpile, because I know he's probably a trending topic. He's probably the number one trending topic in Arizona, if you can even do that. But it's one of those situations, man, where it's like you punishing your kids, right? You keep telling your kids to do the same thing over and over and over again, and then they're not listening to the instructions. So you just take whatever it is away from them. And so he needs to sit down, because again, I can't understand why A.D. Mitchell did what he did. But from the standpoint of, okay, it happened, let's move on. Like, Emari Demercado actually had an example that happened a week before. You saw, because I know he's probably checking his mentions or whatever the case may be, or watching the highlights to see if he can see himself. But you saw it happen. And again, it is on tape. Most teams have a ball meeting on Thursday, and then you have around the league on Friday about scenarios in which you don't want to put your team in, or scenarios that could come up. You know, you call it the Toro situation, where there's 14 seconds or less, you run a play, you're inbounds, you don't have any timeouts, and now you got to run out and get the field goal team, hurricane, whatever you want to call it, hurricane, Toro, where you see all these type of situational things that happen, and you go over these things on Friday. So he saw it. And then for you to do it the very next week, you know, you either you don't care, or I don't know what the case is. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. And again, and Lige talked about this on an earlier show, he already came into the game with some frustrations because they had injuries at the running back position, and he felt like he should have been the next guy up, but they brought other guys up from the practice squad and gave them opportunities. Young man, this is why. Because when you had your opportunity, you had a 71-yard run to be able to close the door. And when I say close the door, that means put the game out of reach, and we can all put our hats on. You can start eating your sunflower seeds and, you know, talking about what you're going to do tonight. You had an opportunity to close the door and have your team look at you as a guy they can trust giving the ball to, and you went out and did this.
Man, we're going long because Rand went on his rant as well.
Sorry.
So we got two rants in one segment. That's all right. We're going to take another break here when we come back. I want to talk about some quarterbacks, young and old, and we'll talk about those two guys right after this break. All right, let's try to be a little bit more upbeat here. We've had some tough topics here to start this show. We're typically trying to get people off to a good week. JJ, I'll come to you. Let's talk about the Browns, a team that lost yet again. I think their starting quarterbacks, who are rookies, are 0-17. Dylan Gabriel showed glimpses. So that's the silver lining, the moral victory, if you will. But I wanted to ask you about something that you talked about last week, I believe. And if I'm misinformed, you can just tell me. But I think you said, I didn't see it, but I read it, that Shedeur Sanders, his career is not over in 2025. There may be an opportunity for him to get on the field this year. Talk about what you said last week prior to this game, and if you've had any conversations about the response from the organization to how Dylan played, because Myles Garrett said he gave them a chance to win, which I think is absolutely fair.
Yeah, it is fair. And I think he was probably let down a little bit by coaching Dylan Gabriel, if I can just be honest, because he's a rookie starting in his first game. He's a third rounder, so we understand what his stock here is, right? He's on a completely different continent, all this stuff, right? I mean, folks can't even come to the game, can't even have a support system there because, you know, they don't have a real ID or a passport or whatever. So this is it's a difficult situation for him. So you're going to have to help him out. And what I saw was in the fourth quarter, you are leading 17-14. And there's 3.5 minutes left, okay? The Vikings punted the ball to them, and the Browns have the football, 3:27 left. They go run, pass. And it's not one of those passes that, like, okay, it's an easy completion, whether we get a first down or not, because a first down effectively wins them the game, right? But Dylan Gabriel throws it out of bounds, and you didn't set him up for success. In fact, what you set him and the offense up for was a 11-second possession. 11 seconds. went off the clock before you give the football back to a tired defense. And so I didn't like that. And that was not putting him in the best position possible. I said last week, at some point, Shedeur Sanders is going to play, not based off of any insight. I am not a soothsayer. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't have a crystal ball. But, like, do we really think that Dylan Gabriel is going to start the next 12 games? No. I think that ultimately Shedeur Sanders, an opportunity is going to present itself to Shedeur Sanders. Either the poor play that could happen in front of him or an unfortunate injury, because it's a 100% injury rate in this league. So Shedeur has to get himself ready. He's not ready yet, according to the Browns. And I say that not because they said it on the record, but because he's still the emergency third-string quarterback. But he has to get himself ready for when that takes place at some point, I believe, this season.
What do you think, Rand?
No, I mean, I agree. And I think from, to expound on JJ's point, I thought they called a safe game, right?
Yeah.
With some of the things that they asked him to do. They did help him out, roll him, get him outside of the pocket, kind of scheme number one open in those type situations. And look, this is where Dylan Gabriel thrives because he is a smart and intelligent young man, and he's played in multiple offensive systems with the multiple schools that he's been to. But one thing we always knew is that he was accurate and he could play on time. And so that's what he did yesterday. But what's going to end up happening, especially with the way Quinshon Judkins is running at this point, people are going to start stacking the box and say, hey, you beat us, and you beat us in a way where you're going to have to throw the ball downfield. And we didn't see but that's another problem. But you're going to –
the tight ends.
Because now now these safeties are going to creep up, and you got to push the ball down the field. But I'll keep saying the Browns quietly have a winning formula because you have a top 5, top 10 defense. You have a potential top 5, top 10 run game. Now you just have to figure out the rest of the thing. And I agree with JJ. I think we're going to see – I think you almost have to see Shedeur Sanders at some point because – and I won't even talk about it any further. The draft picks for next year's draft class, and the only way you know is whether you have to know what you have in-house already before you can make a decision about the future.
Yep, 2 first-round picks, and we've talked about it a lot on the Wednesday show. They absolutely crushed this draft, Andrew Berry and company, except for the 3rd and 5th round picks, the quarterbacks, which they got to figure out, and that's what we're in the process of doing. So just goes to show when you don't have a quarterback, everything else can be perfect, and it's going to be tough to win football games. They need a receiver. Awesome offensive line things to sort through, but most of that is injury related. Rand, I'll come back to you because I want to talk about an elder statesman among the quarterbacks, and Eugene Cyril Smith III, who is one of my favorite players, but he has 9 interceptions. He leads the NFL. Jake Browning is trying his best on short duty to catch him, but they're not winning football games. And Pete Carroll, the most optimistic person on planet Earth, seems relatively defeated by Pete Carroll standards in the way they're losing these games in blowout fashion. Is there any consideration to mixing things up and benching Geno and going with Kenny Pickett? Like, how do you sort this out? Because it has gone exactly the opposite way I would imagine Pete Carroll thought it was going to go.
Well, I'm still waiting on the pick-me-up part of this show because you said we were transitioning to –
It might be the last segment.
But no, I mean, Geno knows he has to play better. I mean, you look there, tips and overthrows, got to get those. I mean, that is what it is. But throwing in the double coverage, that Geno knows – he knows better than that. He's thrown 5 interceptions in the last 2 weeks combined, and through 5 weeks you got 3 multi-interception games. Already. And like you said, he leads the league in interceptions. Listen, he has to play better. Benching him, who are you going to bench him for?
Kenny Pickett.
Who are you going to bench him for?
Aiden O'Connell.
Who are you going to bench him for? Because even if they decrease the amount of turnovers, they still don't give you a chance to win the football game. And all it takes is for Geno to have that one game to get this thing turned around. And then, he got the offense back rolling. Now, what's going to have to happen at this point is offensive coordinator Chip Kelly's going to have to take the ball out of Geno's hands some and start giving it to the young runner and lean on that, to happen a little bit, or roll the pocket and get him some easier throws. Scheme up one to get some high percentage throws and get these things rolling. But I don't think benching Geno. I don't think you solve anything by benching Geno.
Any thoughts on that, JJ? Have you heard anything about the state of the building there?
Yeah, obviously they need to get a win. I don't think there's any doubt. And they've played fairly poorly going east, which is strange for Pete Carroll, right? They got the win, I think, against the Patriots to start the season, but that was his whole calling card with Seattle, is that they know how to play as they go, the other side of the country. Ryan, you've let us talk so much, and you've been such a great host. I'm actually curious because clearly you have thoughts on Geno Smith and the Raiders, so I want to give the floor to you, the host on Ran It Back Monday.
You're going to put the gun in your lap.
It's incredibly frustrating because I have been a huge Geno supporter since he became red hot with the Seahawks. Because you talk about Vince Lombardi. Geno Smith was the backup for the Chargers at one point, and that's sort of hard to remember because he was just a role player at that point. Goes to Seattle, and then he's lighting it up. As a Steelers fan, I was incredibly frustrated that the Steelers used a third-round pick on DK Metcalf this summer. Traded a third round for Geno Smith to bring him to Pittsburgh. Turns out Aaron Rodgers is playing better than Geno Smith right now. I don't know. Maybe that would have been a 50-50 conversation if I asked you that over the summer. But to Rand's larger point, Geno has to play better. And there's not necessarily a backup plan as producer Sharon informs me, Rand, Super Bowl champion Kenny Pickett coming in and replacing him, because we all know who Kenny Pickett is. But I do wonder sometimes if just taking a break, maybe like an A.D. Mitchell / Amari DiMercado break for a couple series to get your mind right, might be the best thing. But I don't know. Like when you're losing, and Rand, I'll ask you this, when it's collapsing down around you, whether it's in college or the NFL, it becomes less about football, it feels like, and more about just keeping your head above water. So how do you shake that if you're in that building in Las Vegas?
I mean, you just got to put your head down and go back to work. You know what I mean? Because there isn't a savior off the street that you're going to sign today or tomorrow that's going to come in and going to flip this thing, right? Unless you want to go and figure out a way to bring Derek Carr back, but that's a whole nother thing. So, savior isn't coming. I'll just say that.
Larry Bird ain't walking through that door, to quote Rick Pitino back in the day. All right, Bruce Sharon, let's take a break. And then when we come back, I am going to talk about a savior, my second favorite Jones after Jonathan Jones, Mac Jones. And let's have a conversation about hypothetical, if you will, about trade scenarios involving McCorkle Jones and what organization he could potentially save as JJ sighs and puts his hand behind his head. We'll talk about that right after this break. All right, let's see if JJ's still giggling. Oh, he's not. We do a lot of giggling on the show for Three Grown Men and producer Sharon. Rand, would you agree that producer Sharon is the strongest person you've ever met, and you've been in football your entire life?
I mean, he definitely looks the part. You know what I mean? I call him Chessie Jackson. You know, he walks around with his chest all.
Chessie Jackson. Before we move on, and you guys got on me last week because I was disrespectful to D'Amico's chance to win Hunger Games versus Robert Saleh. Who would win in an arm wrestling competition, producer Sharon or D'Amico Ryans?
Listen, I'm going to roll with Sharon.
There it is, Sharon.
Just because he's got an 80-pound dumbbell in the control room right now, curling during the show.
All right. If this doesn't work out for you, Sharon, you can be a strength coach somewhere because you are getting high praise from Rand Carthon.
He was a strength coach at Miami-Dade. He told us that during the break.
He just told us that. He also told us he ran like a 10-500 or something. So we got to fact check that. That's why we have capital J journalist JJ here. Speaking of Joneses, and look, maybe I'm overblown, this hyperbole, whatever you want to call it. Trade deadline's November 4th, JJ. And there's very few teams that need quarterbacks. And then you have Kirk Cousins, who we talk about, Russ Wilson, Mac Jones. I mean, and Rand, you can talk about the Kyle Shanahan absolutely not trading Mac Jones. But is there any conversation anywhere, JJ, about any of these veteran quarterbacks likely moving to help poor teams? The names that come to mind in terms of the teams are the Bengals, and that's it. Every other team is either had 1 or 2 wins and, other things going on.
The Bengals believe in Jake Browning, and it defies what the three of us are watching. They actually do believe in him, and he did not play well, and he has not played well. And me speaking, he's not going to play well. This is going to continue. And the whole point was they needed to go 500 until Joe Burrow could get back, mid to late December. And then you could still be in the playoff hunt. and you wouldn't waste a Joe Burrow year. You wouldn't waste a Jamar Chase year. And so they are not interested in Kirk Cousins by evidence of the fact that they have not called the Atlanta Falcons about Kirk Cousins to even discuss, hey, you eat some of his contract or get him to waive the no trade clause. They're not interested in Russell Wilson. They're not interested in Anthony Richardson. No one is calling about these guys right now. And Anthony Richardson's the last one who's going to get moved. I'll tell you, really the last one who's going to get moved is Mac Jones because he is on, guys, the best contract, non-rookie deal in the NFL. He is a 3-0 starter who's on a 2-year, $8.4 million deal. They are winning games because of Mac Jones in some ways. And Ran, I believe you were a member of a 49ers organization. Maybe you had left when they were down quarterbacks in the game to go to the Super Bowl. And Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said never again. And so I don't know why in the world a Niners team that has a banged up Brock Purdy, who has been banged up in his career with various ailments, would trade away a Mac Jones to help a Cincinnati Bengals or whomever when they have him on this deal. I mean, I can't believe he didn't sign a 1-year deal. The fact that they have him under contract next year means that they are not going to let him go. And anyone considering where he could wind up, bro, there is no way. He may be one of the most untradeable assets in the entire NFL. A backup quarterback on a great contract who is winning you football games. There's no way they're trading him, Rand.
No,
Second round pick, Rand. Second round pick.
And I was gonna say, hey, look, every man's got a price, right? And if that price is right, because I remember being in San Fran 2017, we lost 9 games in a row, and we went to New England and gave up a second-round pick for backup Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's right.
And then that kind of turned everything around. But to JJ's point, and shout out to Parag Marathe and Brian Hampton, you know, their lead contract negotiators there in San Francisco. But to get Mac Jones on this contract, and it was so funny because I actually, after it was one of those wins, I want to say it's possibly the Rams win, I texted Parag, and I was like, man, you should probably want to talk about an extension with this guy. And because I was under the assumption he was on a 1-year deal as well. And Parag was like, oh, he signed to a 2-year deal.
2 years, $7 million, right?
And I was like, whoa.
8.4.
I was like, whoa. So that was a great deal by those guys. And look, you talk about Kyle Shanahan, right, and his ability with these quarterbacks, and that's a whole nother argument for a different show. But to have a guy in Mac Jones that you don't have to deviate from your play calling, you can run your same offense with him because you know he can handle everything. That is key. I agree with JJ. I don't think he's tradable. I do think this. I will say this, JJ, and I believe you, and I know for a fact that Cincinnati does believe in Jake Browning. However, I do think at some point over the next week or two, particularly starting this week, they're going to look into some other options, right? And some of those options, Kirk Cousins isn't happening. The Bengals are too cheap to, give up draft capital and take on any portion of that number. I do think Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston will be one of the 2 names that are expendable at the Giants that I think will probably be solid fits for him. But another name I want to throw in there from the Rams side of things is Jimmy Garoppolo. Because I do know the Rams organization, they have a high opinion of Stetson Bennett. But the reason why I say Jimmy Garoppolo is obviously because of his experience, but also because of his experience in this offense. He's currently playing in the offense in L.A. that Zach is running in Cincinnati. So I think that's another name that we should be talking about.
All right.
I would just say, and just real quick, Ryan, because I think those are great names. Both of you know this, to get the quarterback in you need to get the quarterback in the system, right? Because it's not trade for him on Wednesday, play him on Sunday, right? That happened with Baker Mayfield and the Rams in a pinch. You don't want to do that if you're the Bengals, and they are very fortunate the division is what it is right now. But get the ball rolling on getting your guy in there so that you can get as many victories with new quarterback and not Jake Browning. The fact that they keep waiting is just prolonging, to me, what is the inevitable.
All right. Let's take another break here, and we'll wrap things up. We'll do that right after this break. All right, let's wrap things up talking about some under-the-radar moments from Sunday that got our attention. And I'm going to go to the Dolphins-Panthers game in Charlotte, JJ's former crib. And that game on paper looked like it was going to be terrible. The Dolphins showed up for 40 minutes or so and then quit, and the Panthers came back. Rico Dotto had a huge game, ran for over 200 yards. He was so good, Rand, that he was smack-talking the Dallas Cowboys, who they play next week. I would caution against that. But what I want to point to is play-by-play announcer Eric Collins, who normally does Charlotte Hornets basketball. I had no idea who he was, and my man was having a field day. And, JJ, you know him well from your days in Charlotte. It feels like the way Eric Collins calls this game, like it's the most important game ever on planet Earth, is good once a month, maybe not good 82 times a year, but he does bring some excitement to a football game that otherwise people may not be interested in seeing.
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly an excitement level that I think nationally, that's probably way down the list of games that people want to watch or listen to. And so, if you do happen, if you're watching at the bar and all of a sudden the other games have gone off and they're like, hey, change the audio to the other game, but there's Eric Collins, you don't change it. So shout out to him for having some fun with it. Hopefully we get to hear him on the airwaves a little bit more.
Hey, fun fact, Rand, Eric Collins, who I was not familiar with because I haven't watched Charlotte Hornets basketball since Grandmama was there and Muggsy Bogues and Kelly Creek before that. My man, Eric Collins, went to St. Lawrence University. So shout out to St. Lawrence. Got to get them on every show. Rand, what was the player moment that stuck out to you from Sunday's action?
To me, it was that the Raiders-Colts game, and in back-to-back possessions, the Raiders lost their punter, A.J. Cole, and then the Colts lost their kicker, which then forced the Colts to then have to start going for two after every possession. So it was something that you don't really think about through the course of a football game, but it's one of those situations where I think moving forward teams need to have a plan for, because you don't want to get into a late game situation, and if they didn't have a kicker in place, then now every drive has to end in a touchdown for you to have a chance to win the football game. So just something there. And then also off of that is now this new rule from getting the ball into the landing zone. Because now if you don't have your kicker, you're typically going to go to your punter to kick for you. And if he doesn't have experience in terms of getting the ball to that landing zone, this is something that you got to work out. And I will say that A.J. Cole was still able to hold for the Raiders on extra points. But again, it was one of those things that you got to have a plan for, because what happens if he can't hold? Who's your emergency holder?
Kenny Pickett, it turns out, is the emergency holder for the Raiders. So another shot at you
there
for
they go.
downplaying.
There they go. Every time we want to talk about it, you got to bring up Kenny Pickett.
Hey, let me ask you, give me a 10-second answer. How important is it more important now than ever during training camp, especially, to figure out who the backup long snapper, punter, kicker, holder are because of the changing rules with special teams?
No, that's already a part of your plan and who that person is, and that person gets reps throughout the spring and through training camp.
Okay, so the changing rules don't make necessarily a difference, although you would imagine the target zone kicking requires a little more practice if you're the punter, for example, and have to do some backup duty. All right, Randy Back Mondays is officially over. Rand has his Miami Vice outfit on, so he's going to go do whatever his photo shoot is next, so look forward to seeing that. Rand and I will be back on Thursday this week to do Young Fellow Wednesdays to talk about some of these college prospects and NFL players, rookies who have balled out. Thanks to my guy, Jonathan Jones. Thanks to Rand Carthon for joining me here. You can check out With the First Pick wherever you get your podcasts. Scan that QR code. Leave us a 5-star review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll talk about your favorite player. We will catch you guys in the next one.